The Baltimore Ravens fall to the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 16. We talk about it all next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, I'm your host, Kavon Seymour of Ravens Wire, and we return here. Unfortunately, it's not another victory Monday. The Ravens lose their fourth straight game, this time coming to the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 16. The final score, 41-21. The loss moves Baltimore to 8-7. Cincinnati moves to 9-6 and now has sole possession of first place in the AFC North. Baltimore, if their 8-7 record, is now one game behind Cincinnati in terms of actual record, but also Cincinnati wins the head-to-head tiebreaker. Cincinnati sweeps Baltimore on the year. Joe Burrow lights up this Ravens secondary that really isn't much of a secondary anymore. The team just keeps going through body after body after body after body. And it's not just the cornerbacks. It's all these different positions. It's been a thing since training camp, and now it's really, really starting to hurt this team. Not that it wasn't before, but every week it just seems to get worse and worse and worse. So we'll dive in everything that happened in this game. Obviously, a lot of storylines, obviously, starting with the offense. We'll talk about the offense in the first segment, how Josh Johnson performed, Rashad Bateman's first NFL touchdown, and much more. Then in the second segment, just talking about what went wrong for this defense, giving up 525 yards to Joe Burrow, 2 touchdowns to T. Higgins. Higgins had 194 yards receiving. Jamar Chase adding a couple more yards in there. It was just so many different things that went wrong for this Ravens defense, particularly in the secondary. And then in the final segment, we'll get into some playoff scenarios where the Ravens stand right now in the playoff race and just how important their final 2 games are as they head into potentially a 2021-2022 playoff berth, but they clearly could also miss this year's playoffs. So let's dive into all that, though. Before we do that, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify if you're here with us in audio form. If you're here with us in video form on YouTube, you can see my face and in my background. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate everybody who does and who already has. Our first goal is 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. We're slowly growing to that goal, and again, greatly appreciative. I'm also greatly appreciative of everybody who's listening after a loss. I know it can be tough, and it's no fun to talk about them after a loss, but it must be done. So I appreciate everybody who's sticking around for the ride here with me. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter, KaosStriker34, and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So with all that being said, let's jump in and let's talk about this game. This was a tough game for many reasons. I know a lot of people coming into it didn't really expect the Ravens to win it. I had expressed confidence in this team. This was a game they had to have. They really did. And it puts a huge, huge damper on their playoff hopes. And the injuries, the COVID stuff is just all caught up to them. And I hate to use that excuse because, look, every team goes through it, right? Every single NFL team has had at least one, if not multiple, impact injuries or impact absences that have really hindered them throughout the season. But Baltimore missing, again, over 30 players in this game, multiple weeks now where that's been the case. This is a recurring theme, a team that had so much promise heading into the season. And, you can argue still has a little bit heading into the final 2 games, but injuries. You can start with Marcus Peters, Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins. You could move to Ronnie Stanley, Deshaun Elliott, Marlon Humphrey, Derek Wolfe, all these different players who go down, and there are plenty more. Obviously, the injury to Lamar Jackson has been a huge hindrance to their offense. So it's been rough this year. In this game against the Bengals, the Ravens had to turn to Josh Johnson, the veteran journeyman quarterback who found out less than 24 hours before the game that he was going to start, as Tyler Huntley ends up going on the reserve COVID list after testing positive. Chris Streveler, the practice squad backup, was already on the COVID list, and Lamar Jackson didn't travel with the team due to his ankle injury. So it was Josh Johnson and Kenji Bahar, who keeps coming in and out and in and out and in and out of Baltimore. Those were the 2 guys. And all things considered, I thought Johnson did play well. He finished the game 28 of 40, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Also had 5 carries for 10 yards. But really, at this stage in his career, isn't that dynamic threat that Lamar Jackson or Tyler Huntley is on the ground. You could see it kind of reminded me, honestly, a bit of what Robert Griffin III brought to the table in terms of the run game. He was just a step slow, and no slandering the guy here. Like, look, it's just what he is right now. I don't think the Ravens should have attempted as many draws or whatever RPOs as they did with Johnson QB runs. but he's just not that factor. So it makes Baltimore's offense a bit more one-dimensional than it would be if Huntley or Jackson was out there. But Johnson was slinging the rock, made a lot of nice completions, a lot of good throws into tight windows. And his receivers helped him out a lot. There weren't a ton of plays where you could say, oh, why'd the receiver do that? Or he did this, or there was a drop. No, there really wasn't a lot of that. I think that they all played very well, but Johnson came in a very tough spot in the biggest game of the year, high pressure situation. And I think performed just about as well as you could have asked for a guy who had signed with the Ravens just about a week and a half ago. He hasn't been with the team that long. He's still learning the offense. He has kind of been in and out of the NFL on all his stops. He's been in the XFL and the AAF and all these other places. So he's a guy that has plenty of NFL experience as well as just football professional experience. But yeah, I was impressed with Josh Johnson. I don't think the Ravens lost this game because, Josh Johnson wasn't good enough. I think that he did play very well. And speaking of those receivers, Mark Andrews doing Mark Andrews things, that's not a surprise anymore. 8 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. The breakout star of this game, though, for me was James Crochet II. Crochet had a very nice game, 7 receptions, 76 yards, didn't score, but averaged 10.9 yards per catch. He was all over the field, making nice hands catches and just doing the things that I think a lot of people were so excited about when the Ravens, 1, drafted him, but 2, with a bigger opportunity, these are the types of things that people expected out of him. And that's where I think with how the Ravens have put together their receiving room with the young guys they have, Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, James Crochet, Tylan Wallace, right? They have a future with these wide receivers here. And look, these guys aren't like, AJ Browns, or they're not any of these like Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins type players right now, and who says they'll ever be, but they have a very, very solid group of young receivers who, with the right development, the right coaching, and just the right them, can all be very solid threats to a Ravens offense that will be getting pieces back healthy next season and still can compete this year. Marquise Brown had 5 receptions for 44 yards. Rashad Bateman, 4 for 26, but the most important part, he scored his first career NFL touchdown. Finally, his 10th NFL game, he gets it. And, I'm super happy for him. He was itching for it, I could tell. And, he got in that end zone and he was like, yes. So I'm happy. It was a great play. The Ravens opening drive, they end up getting Bateman the ball in the end zone. And that drive to me was the Ravens' best opening drive all year. For a team that has struggled immensely in first quarters, and for a team that just, couldn't really put a ton together, and they did it last week against Green Bay, but they couldn't really put a ton together at the start of games. 12 plays, 75 yards. Those are the types of plays that you want to see out of an offense early. Get the momentum. And look, they did, but the defense just couldn't stop a thing and didn't really give the Ravens an opportunity to stay in the game because they go up 7-3. And then after that, the Bengals score 38 points and the Ravens don't score that many points. They score 14. So it's kind of like, all right, the Ravens, with the offense they had, with the players they had out there, they weren't putting up 41 points on Sunday. They had to have their defense stop a little bit, and they couldn't stop anything except on 2 possessions. The Bengals scored on every single possession but 2. So not really what you want to see from the defense, but I thought the offense overall, definitely some flashes that you can take away for next week and next year. Honestly, the run game was not amazing in this game, kind of a regression. No ball carry for the Ravens, averaged over 3 yards a carry. Devonta Freeman, 6 for 17 and a touchdown. That's 2.8 yards per carry. Latavius Murray, 5 for 12. That's 2.4 yards per carry. And Josh Johnson, 5 for 10. That's 2 yards per carry. So, yeah, this team, look, we've talked every week about it. They miss J.K. Dobbins. They miss Gus Edwards. They miss their offensive line. Ronnie Stanley's going to come back and hopefully be 100%. Well, hopefully he's going to come back, be 100%. He'll be on that offensive line. Looking ahead, and I'm not looking ahead because I think their season's over. I don't think that's the case. Their path to the playoffs, it relies on them. But looking ahead to the 2022 offseason, look, there are scenarios where Alejandro Villanueva returns. I don't think he is going to, and that's not me like having knowledge or anything. This is just like a shot in the dark. But the Ravens can save money by cutting him. They have a lot of other options for right tackle. I think Juwan James is someone who a lot of people are excited about. If they invest a high pick in a rookie who can play on the right side, I think that's another option for him. Patrick McCarry, if they re-sign him, he's shown to hold up very, very well. So I just don't see a spot for Villanueva on this team. And there are a lot of question marks on that offensive line as well. Is Bradley Bozeman going to come back? I mean, I hope so. But the Ravens are missing some of their pieces on the offensive line, and it's showing they just need a bit more consistency. They have had Bozeman and Kevin Zeitler play at a very high level. Hopefully we're getting Stanley back at a high level. And then if Ben Cleveland is the guy at left guard or whoever it is there, then I think, they can do a lot. But right now it's just been the inconsistencies of having so many guys rotating in and out. It's been a bit of an issue. So I thought the offensive line in general wasn't terrible in this game overall. I mean, Josh Johnson was only sacked one time, so the pass protection was decent, but the run blocking was kind of 50-50 in this one. So the Bengals defense, they did enough, and I mean more than enough, holding this Ravens team to 21 points. Von Bell picks off Josh Johnson late in this game, and then Trey Hendrickson got his sack. Obviously, he's been phenomenal for Cincinnati this season. So with all that being said, the Ravens showed flashes on offense, but ultimately couldn't get the job done and win the game on Sunday. We'll head into our first break. When we get back, we'll be diving into the Ravens' defensive performance in Week 16 against Cincinnati. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar or even better than a candy bar in Built Bar. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. There are so many flavors you'll have a hard time choosing. Built Bar gives you the extra fuel you need to bust down the mall doors and battle all the holiday shoppers. People are so passionate about their favorite flavor, they'll fight for it. So tell Santa to throw a few of those Built Bars in those stockings and dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa. If you like some of the marshmallow treats around the holidays, get your hands on some Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. We return here, our second segment of this non-Victory Monday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Allstriker still here with you. And yes, the Ravens falling 41-21 to the Bengals in Week 16. And yeah, not amazing. I'll tell you that much. The Ravens fall to a division rival. They get swept at the hands of the Bengals. And now the Bengals have sole possession of first place in the AFC North. And they're in pretty good position to win it all. But the division is still close, and they're still past for the Ravens to do some damage and even win the North in some situations. We'll talk about those in the final segment, but let's talk a bit about this Ravens defense, because I mean, wow, what a roster it is, right? This team had to call up 12 people or activate 12 people to the game day roster just to get to the 48. They still had healthy and active or unhealthy inactives that were injured, and Joe Burrow just lights the secondary on fire. We were talking last week about, oh, look, Aaron Rodgers didn't throw for 500 yards or 4 touchdowns or anything, but Joe Burrow, yeah, he did that. He did that. And look, to be fair to the Ravens first, their defense was just decimated. They had barely anyone out there. Some of the key players who started the year as key players were Chuck Clark, Patrick Queen, Brandon Williams, Odafe Owe, Tyus Bowser, Anthony Averett, Tavon Young. But Anthony Averett and Tavon Young both got hurt, and they ended up leaving the game. So you're down your top 7 corners. And against the team with Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, etc., CJ Uzoma, yeah, bad things are probably going to happen, and that's just a product of what it is. And now, to be fair to the Bengals, they did what they were supposed to do, right? They went out and they beat up on a practice squad defense, which I think for Cincinnati fans, anything less than that would have been a failure. So they went out and they got their job done, which was, we know that this team is decimated. We know that we have talent on offense. Let's go out there and let's show it to them. And they did it. Going up against Daryl Worley and Kavon Seymour and Robert Jackson and whoever else was out there for the Ravens in that secondary. It's just, there are a lot of things that opposing offenses can do to that type of secondary, especially with the weapons Cincinnati has. So look, credit to Baltimore for staying tough and hanging in there, even though the defense did not play well, but credit to Cincinnati for, doing their job and getting it done. I'm not saying that Cincinnati's a terrible team and, they didn't deserve this one because the Ravens were injured. No, I mean, look, they did their job, but at the same time, this is just a shadow of what the Ravens are as a team. They're missing so many guys on both sides of the ball. And look, I mean, it's frustrating for a lot of people, right? Because coming into the year, we saw just how deep this one, cornerback position was, but 2, the team in general was. And now here we are entering Week 17, and the Ravens have pretty much no one in any position. So it's been tough for the Ravens for sure. As I mentioned, Joe Burrow, 37-46, 525 yards and 4 touchdowns. Joe Mixon had 18 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown. T. Higgins, 12 for 194 and 2 scores. Jamar Chase, 7 for 125. Tyler Boyd, 3 for 85 and a score. Joe Mixon, 6 for 70 and a score. So, the Ravens defense, I mean, they were led by Tony Jefferson, who, shout out to Tony Jefferson. Tony Jefferson played very, very well in this game. He was all around the football, was tackling very well, and he looked like the Tony Jefferson that many thought they were getting when he signed that big money deal back a couple years ago in Baltimore. And that's the type of player that Jefferson showed that, hey, maybe he still has a bit of that left. So I was very happy to see Tony Jefferson ball out the way he did. It was very impressive to me to see that. Patrick Queen had 9 tackles. His resurgence has been so amazing over the second half of this season. He's faster, he looks quicker, he's just more confident, feeding off the crowd energy. That's big for him, getting himself pumped up, and he's playing very physical as well, which I think is huge for a guy like him in his game. So big shout out to Patrick Queen. Kavon Seymour next with 7 tackles, and I'll shout out Kavon Seymour for being the 3rd leading tackler, even though he had a very poor game. The reason he was 3rd in tackles is because he was getting burnt so much, and he had to get the guy he was getting burned by down. No shade, but at the same time, it is what it is. He did not have a great game. Daryl Worley also did not play well, and I'm sure a lot of Ravens fans are saying, look, we're looking forward to next year when we don't have to see those two playing meaningful snaps. The Ravens in the biggest game of their season were getting snaps from Daryl Worley, Kavon Seymour, guys like, Jefferson and Anthony Levine and Robert Jackson, guys who you would have never thought heading into the 2021 season in the preseason or right before week 1 that you would see having meaningful snaps and playing the majority of the snaps for this defense in the biggest game of their season. And that's just what happens. A Bengals team that has just been very healthy this year. They've gotten very lucky. And look, let's go back to 2019 when the Ravens got very lucky themselves with injuries. They really only had 2 major ones with Tavon Young and Pernell McPhee. Those were the 2 major ones for them in 2019, unless something else is slipping my mind. But look, some teams just have really bad injury years like the Ravens are having right now, and some teams get relatively lucky like the Bengals. And that's the Bengals are this and that and the other, and the Ravens are this and that and the other. Look, for the Ravens, I will take the injury excuse, even though it's not an excuse anymore. I will say that was a key defining factor of their season, and I said it back in week 1 or even before the season when Marcus Peters and Edwards and Dobbins went down. I said injuries will be a key factor and a defining factor of the season for this team. Either the Ravens were able to overcome the injuries or the Ravens weren't. It's as simple as that. And right now they're kind of on the brink. We don't really know if they're going to make the playoffs or not at this point. And we'll talk about that again in the 3rd segment. But the way this defense played, the pass rush was there to an extent. Joe Burrow was sacked 3 times for 27 yards. 3 sacks came courtesy of Tony Jefferson, Broderick Washington, and also you had an impressive performance by Isaiah Mack, who actually should have had 2 sacks, but the one got called off from 12 men on the field on both teams that Zach Taylor challenged early on in the game. So, all these guys stepping up in other situations where just, again, this team is decimated on every level in this game. So, with who the Ravens had, with who the Ravens entered the game with, and ultimately left the game with because of the injuries that happened, you can't help but respect the fight that this team has put up. But now heading into a tough week 17 matchup against the Rams, you have a divisional matchup against Pittsburgh in week 18. Baltimore really, really has to win those 2 games. And the way the defense played against Cincinnati, it's not going to cut it. Cincinnati averaged over 10 yards per play in the first half. They finished the game at averaging 8.2 yards per play. The Ravens held the Bengals to 3.7 yards per carry, so the run defense was not terrible. The run defense has been a strength for this defense all season long, and that continued in week 16, but the Bengals held the ball for just about 15 minutes more than the Ravens did. The Bengals held it for 37 minutes and 3 seconds. The Ravens just 22 minutes and 57 seconds. Baltimore did cut down on their penalties, considering 6 for 27 for the Ravens, 5 for 45 for the Bengals. But yeah, the Bengals go 5 for 10 on 3rd down, 2 for 2 on 4th down. The Ravens go 6 of 11 on 3rd down. So a good 3rd down game for both teams. But at the end of the day, the Ravens, they know what's ahead for them. They know this was a big loss, and a lot of people know it was a big loss for them. And now heading into week 17, they understand that, look, they have to win their next 2 games, all things considered, to get into the playoffs. As I've said over the past couple of weeks, I think 10-7 is enough to get them into the playoffs. but I don't think 9-8 is. So we'll talk about where the Ravens stand in the playoff picture and just what scenarios they have on the horizon for them in our final segment. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. BetOnline has you covered this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. As football continues its march through the college bowl season and the pro football playoffs, BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the website or use your mobile device 2 times a day and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, so don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers. BetOnline, where the game starts. We return here. It's our final segment of this Monday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kavon Seymour, your host, still here with you. And we're rounding out this show talking about the playoffs. And obviously, for the Ravens, the playoffs have become a bit of a tricky subject as they now stand at 8-7. They're, at the time of this recording, still the number 7 seed in the AFC. They actually moved up a spot despite their loss to the Bengals in week 16. And we'll talk about that in a second. And actually, we'll talk about it right now. Let's talk about it right now. So for the playoff picture in the AFC, this is pending Monday Night Football between the Dolphins and the Saints. You have the Chiefs at number 1, the Titans at number 2, the Bengals at number 3, and the Bills at number 4 for the top 4 seeds who are leading their division. Then for the wild card, you have Indianapolis at number 5 at 9-6, New England at number 6 at 9-6. Then you have Baltimore at number 7 at 8-7, Los Angeles at number 8 with 8-7, and then you have the Las Vegas Raiders at 8-7 with the number 9 seed. And so why do the Ravens have number 7? Well, we talked about this a bit last week in terms of the actual tiebreakers for a wild card race that has 3 or more teams tied with the same record. And usually in most scenarios, it's head to head, but not in that scenario. It's more common opponents and conference opponents and whatnot. So the Ravens win the tiebreaker over Los Angeles based on head-to-head win percentage. Division tiebreaker was initially used to eliminate Las Vegas. Los Angeles wins tiebreaker over Las Vegas based on head-to-head win percentage. So, yeah, look, tons of crazy tiebreakers. It's a lot to keep up with, I understand. But, hey, the Ravens are in there right now, and that is good. But here's the caveat. If the Dolphins beat the Saints today on Monday Night Football, the Dolphins move into that number 7 spot because of the loss that you have with the Ravens and the Dolphins back all the way in week 10. And that's a big game because, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, the Dolphins are 1-7 and they're not good. And here they are. Here they are. They've done a lot of good over the past 2 months. And it all started for them against Baltimore. Baltimore really helped them out there. And credit to them and what they've been able to do. But, yeah, it's crazy how, you know, a lot of people count Miami out and all of a sudden here they are charging, and it looks like they might have a serious playoff run in them if they do end up making the big dance. But yeah, for the Ravens now, these next 2 games are must wins. Again, 10-7 for me is enough for the Ravens to make the playoffs. I think that will be enough, but 9-8, I think just with how many teams are competitive in the AFC this season, with, you know, so many teams in the hunt and being so close together based off of records. Yeah, I don't see a scenario where the Ravens can get in at 9-8. Now, there are a few, but with the way that the Ravens' divisional record is, their AFC record isn't amazing this year. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing. I mean, looking at their conference record, they're 5-6. So, I mean, looking at the teams who are actually in the playoff hunt still, the only teams that have a worse conference record than 5-6 right now are the Browns at 4-6. You have the Broncos at 3-7, and the rest of the teams are eliminated. So that 5-6 conference record is not great. And actually, only one team, no teams have a worse divisional record than the Ravens do in their own division. The Broncos are 1-3, but the Ravens coming in at 1-4 actually have the worst division record of the teams still in the playoff race in the AFC. So if it comes down to conference record or comes down to divisional record, it could be tough sledding for them. So that's why I just don't see a path at 9-8. And they have the Los Angeles Rams at 11-4 coming into M&T Bank Stadium. And if the Ravens had won this game in week 16 against Cincinnati on Sunday, this game wouldn't have been a must win. They could have easily lost it and been okay because one, it was an NFC opponent. And, you know, while wins are definitely important, especially now, there are just too many scenarios with the Ravens loss in week 16 where, again, 9-8 just doesn't cut it for me. So the Rams, they have talent, both sides of the ball. Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham. They got Cam Akers back, who tore his Achilles. He tore his Achilles in like July or something, and he's back for him. You know how Ravens fans would love to have J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards back from their torn ACLs, but no reason to rush him back. You know, take the smart path to recovery. And I'm not saying the Rams didn't. I'm just saying for Dobbins and Edwards and whoever else. But yeah, and on defense, we all know who Aaron Donald is. Now, the last time the Ravens and the Rams played, Aaron Donald was held to 1 total tackle. The Ravens did a phenomenal job, a great job stopping Aaron Donald in that game. But, you know, Jalen Ramsey is now on that team. Von Miller is now on that team. And the Rams defense does have a lot of playmakers. So it'll be important for the Ravens to come out strong in that game. And if the Ravens do win that game, I think this Week 18 matchup with Pittsburgh, it'll be Ben Roethlisberger's, according to the reports, his last game in the NFL. The Steelers don't end up making the playoffs. His last game against arguably his most bitter division rival in the Baltimore Ravens at M&T Bank Stadium. So what a game that would be. But the loss against the Bengals hurts for many reasons. One of it being, it's a division rival, a team that just flat out dominated the Ravens in both weeks. I mean, Tyler Boyd put a video of the Ravens buses leaving the stadium after the game on Sunday and was like, bye, enjoy that L. And, a lot of people are just talking about how if this Ravens team was healthy, it could have been different. It could have been different. Look, I agree. I had this Ravens team right around, it varied for me, but 11-6, 12-5, 13-4, depending. And now they're looking at a best case scenario, 10-7 record. Worst case scenario, you're looking 8-9. So, how the tables turn with injuries and whatnot. And I'll say it. I've said it once. I'll say it again. Injuries cap any NFL team. This is not just a Ravens issue where, injuries don't hurt any team but the Ravens. But at the same time, I think anybody in the NFL has to understand, appreciate, and respect what the Ravens have done this year, despite missing over half their roster, or at least a quarter of it, for the majority of the season. And that's where I still have confidence in them. I am going back and forth on who I think will win this Rams game. The Ravens know their season is on the line. This is their postseason right now. It's 1-done for them. If they lose, they're done. So they really have to understand that, this is go time. We have to win these games, and John Harbaugh will have his guys ready. He expressed confidence in the post-game presser that he'll get some guys back healthy next week. So let's hope, but there will be some guys who still miss this game. We have to figure out who will be off the COVID list, who will be still on the COVID list during this game. But a lot of stuff to figure out as the Ravens enter a critical stretch of their 2021 season, as it is all on the line for them now over the next 2 weeks. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Thank you for tuning in. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens talk, of course. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.